Chapter 10. Opportunism and Theory in Practice. Bernstein's book is very important for the German and international workers' movement. It is the first try to give a theoretical base to the opportunist trends that are common in social democracy. These trends have been part of our movement for a long time if we think about events like the issue of giving money to support steamers. But it is only since about 1890, when the anti-socialist laws were ended, that we have seen a clear trend of opportunism. Ballmer's state socialism, the vote on the Bavarian budget, the agrarian socialism in southern Germany, Heine's policy of compensation, and Schippel's views on tariffs and militarism are the high points in the growth of our opportunist practice. What seems to be the main feature of this practice? A strong dislike for theory. This is natural, because our theory, that is, the ideas of scientific socialism, sets clear limits on what can be done in practice. It tells us what goals to aim for, what means to use to reach those goals, and which methods to follow. It is natural for people who want quick, practical results to try to free themselves from these limits and to work without following our theory. But every time people try this in real life, it does not work. State socialism, agrarian socialism, the policy of compensation, and the issue of the army all turned out to be failures for our opportunism. It is clear that if this way of thinking is to continue, it must try to destroy the ideas of our theory and build a theory of its own. Bernstein's book is exactly an effort in that direction. That is why, in Stuttgart, all the opportunist members of our party quickly joined behind Bernstein's ideas. If the opportunist actions in our party come naturally from the special conditions of our work and its progress, then Bernstein's theory is just as natural an attempt to put these actions together into one general theory. A theory that breaks away from scientific socialism. This is why the published version of Bernstein's ideas should be seen as a test for opportunism and as its first scientific approval. What was the result of this test? We have seen the answer. Opportunism cannot build a strong, positive theory that can stand up to criticism. All it can do is to attack separate parts of Marxist theory and, because Marxist ideas form one solidly built system, hope to shake the whole system from the top to its very foundation. This shows that opportunist actions cannot work with Marxism. It also proves that opportunism does not mix with socialism in general. Its very nature pushes the workers toward the ways of the rich and stops the workers' struggle in its tracks. History shows that the real fight of the workers did not really depend on Marxist ideas. Long before Marx, there were workers' movements and many socialist ideas. Each idea was made for its own time and for the fight of workers to be free. The idea of building socialism on the basis of fairness and justice, on fighting unfair ways of sharing wealth instead of fighting the way things are made, on seeing class conflict as a fight between the poor and the rich, and on trying to add the idea of cooperation into a capitalist system, the very ideas that Bernstein talks about already existed before him. Even though these ideas were not perfect, they worked well for the workers at that time. They were like magical boots that helped the workers learn to walk on the stage of history. But as the struggle between classes grew and changed society, people abandoned those old ideas and developed the ideas of scientific socialism. After that, at least in Germany, there could be no real socialism outside of Marxist socialism, and the workers' struggle could only happen through social democracy. From then on, socialism and Marxism, the workers' fight to be free, and social democracy became one and the same. That is why going back to the old, pre-Marx ideas no longer means regaining the magical boots of the early workers, but only means returning to the weak, worn-out shoes of the rich. Bernstein's theory was both the first and the last try to give a theoretical base to opportunism. It is the last try because, in his system, opportunism has gone as far as it can first by rejecting scientific socialism and then by gathering every bit of confused theory possible. In his book, opportunism has reached its final conclusion, just as it finished its practical side when Schippel dealt with militarism. Marxist ideas can not only argue against opportunism in theory, they alone can explain opportunism as something that happened in the history of the party. The march of the working class toward its final victory on a world scale is not, in fact, so simple a thing. What is special about this movement is that, for the first time in history, the common people, fighting against the ruling classes, will force their way, but they must do it outside the limits of today's society, beyond the existing order. These new forces can only grow by constantly fighting against the current order. Bringing together the large masses of people with a goal that reaches beyond today's society and mixing the everyday struggle with the great world change is the task of the social democratic movement. This movement must find its way between two dangers, either losing its mass support or giving up its final goal and falling into the trap of rich people's reforms, or into narrow-mindedness, anarchy, or opportunism. More than 50 years ago, Marxist ideas gave us strong tools to fight against both extremes. But because our movement is made up of many people and the dangers we face come from real social conditions rather than just ideas, Marxist theory cannot promise us once and for all that we will never see anarchist or opportunist tendencies. We can only overcome these problems when we put theory into practice, using the tools that Marx provided. Marx once wrote about two kinds of revolutions. He said that bourgeois revolutions, like those in the 18th century, move quickly from one success to another. They burst into life with dazzling displays and great excitement, but they do not last long. They soon reach their peak, and then society falls into a long period of nervous reaction until it learns how to enjoy the benefits of that brief period of excitement. In contrast, proletarian revolutions, like those in the 19th century, constantly review and criticize themselves. They stop and rethink their progress, reject weak or half-hearted efforts, and seem to defeat their enemies only to let them gather strength and rise again even stronger. They are always cautious before facing huge challenges until a moment comes when retreat is impossible and the situation shouts, "Here is the result. Now we must act. And then we must celebrate our victory." This idea remains true even after scientific socialism was developed. The workers' movement has not suddenly become social democratic, even in Germany. But it is slowly becoming more social democratic, gradually overcoming the extreme ideas of anarchism and opportunism. These extreme ideas are just steps in the process of social democracy growing over time. For these reasons, the surprising thing is not that opportunist ideas appear at all, but that they are so weak. When these ideas only appeared in a few isolated cases within the party, one might think they had a strong political base. But now that they clearly show up in Bernstein's book, we can only be shocked and say, "What? Is that all you have to offer?" There isn't even a trace of a new idea, nothing that hasn't already been completely refuted, crushed, and turned to dust by Marxism many years ago. The fact that opportunism even speaks up shows that it really has nothing to say. In our party's history, that is the only thing that makes Bernstein's book important. By saying goodbye to the way of thinking of the revolutionary working class, its dialectical method, and its view of history based on material conditions, Bernstein can thank these ideas for giving him the chance to change his own thinking. Only dialectics and the materialist view of history, as great as they are, could make Bernstein seem like an unwitting tool that the rising working class used to show its temporary weakness. But when people look closer, they see that the working class quickly throws these ideas aside with contempt and pride.